Hello, my name is Joy, and I wanted to thank you for giving this little video a chance, because you certainly did not have to. On this channel, I will be documenting my writing journey, especially as I finally delve into writing a novel that I actually will finish. And even if the YouTube algorithm disdains my excursions away from like my little niche, I also would like to talk about the books that I'm reading, as well as, I don't know, maybe some writing craft or something. But the bulk of my videos here will most likely end up being writing vlogs, as that is my current focus. But since we don't know each other, let's start from the beginning. I was always a rather peculiar child. I was the youngest of 7 kids, but there was a really big age gap of 6 years between me and the closest sibling in age to me. And I was also homeschooled until I was a freshman in high school. Therefore, I spent a lot of time with adults, or by myself, or with older kids, you know, like my siblings' friends and that sort of thing. And that's not to say I didn't have friends my age, but like I wasn't like going to school every day. I had a lot of time on my hands. And so, of course, I gravitated towards things that could fill my time. And one such thing was reading. I fell in love with reading when I was 8 years old. And I'm sure that I enjoyed it before that, you know, reading little children's books and stuff. But one day, I discovered the book Watership Down among, I don't know, we had like a little library in my house full of random books that my siblings had read for school or enjoyment, whatever. And I saw that there were rabbits on it. And I mean, the animal lover that I just was like, there's a book about animals? I mean, count me in. So I devoured that book. And those talking rabbits had a chokehold on my heart. And perhaps it was an unhealthy one, considering how violent that book is. But we're not going to talk about that. From there, I fell down the rabbit hole of reading like Chronicles of Narnia and Guardians of Ga'Hoole and the Warrior Cat series and Gregor the Overlander. And frankly, like every single fantasy series I could get my hands on. And then once I got to middle school, it was Percy Jackson. And my freshman year of high school was the Harry Potter craze. And of course, with reading so much and having my brain just opened up to creative possibilities and fantasy worlds, I started to daydream all the time. And frankly, it was probably maladaptive daydreaming, because I would like go outside and walk in circles and talk to myself and make up characters and talk to the characters. And I would go into a room and like close the door, and like my siblings, like if they walked in on me daydreaming, like I would be like, go away, I'm daydreaming, and like push him out of the room. I don't know, I was like 10 years old. It was probably kind of hilarious, but I will say that that daydreaming cultivated this sense of wanting to tell stories and wanting to connect with these fictional characters. And I think that it created the person that I am today, who, you know, is hopefully an empathetic and deep thinking person, I would like to say. When I was 10 years old, I read Aragon over the span of like a day or two, which at that point, that had been like the longest and most ambitious book that I had read to date. Like 500 pages or 600 pages, however many pages it is. My mom told me, oh, Joy, you know that Christopher Paolini, like the person that wrote Aragon, he wrote it when he was a teenager, when he was like 15 years old. And of course, me being 10, I was like, he did that? Like, you can write when you're that young? And so I was like, well, I'm going to write my own book, and I'm going to make it inspired after the Warrior Cat series, but about foxes instead of cats, and instead of clans, they're gonna have troops. And honestly, like, I went to town. I made maps, I started world building, I made character sheets, and I started typing away until I got to, in my words, what was 100 computer pages, which I've since calculated to, it was probably like 30,000 words. Is my guess, maybe. I don't really know exactly like what font I was using or anything like that. If it was double spaced, I don't know. Yeah, I was 10 years old when I did that. And then it was lost because our computer got a virus, and I kind of gave up after a little while, but you know, my little soul persisted. Obviously, that book was bad. I'm sure it was so bad and so derivative, but like, I like caught the bug. Like, I had to write. I had all these ideas. They had to get out of my head. I couldn't not write. And so I continued just kind of on that train. I would make up stories, make up little worlds. I would write. I tried for another like full-length book when I was a freshman in high school, I think. I still have it. It's probably also 30 to 40,000 words, and it was not complete. It was just like a first draft. I've gone back to read it, and it's so bad. It's so bad. But it was so good for me to do it. And yeah, I kept writing, kept writing, kept reading, kept writing. And when it came to college and picking out my major, I started like on a pre-med track, and I was a little bit burnt out on reading because of like AP literature class and that sort of thing. I was like, all right, I need a break from that. Majoring in like literature does not sound appealing to me at all. And of course I had people breathing down my neck saying like, you got good grades, you need to go to medical school, which like, okay, sure. Not for me. No. After trying that for a year, my freshman year doing pre-med stuff, I opted out. I declined. I pressed the eject button. I said, no, I can't do this for the rest of my life. It was kind of crazy for me to even consider because like I hate hospitals. They give me massive anxiety anytime I step into them. But anyway, all that to say, I eventually changed my major. And I decided on creative writing, much to the chagrin of everyone in my life that was like, you're not going to make any money doing that. And maybe it was not wise, but like, listen, I've carved out a space for myself. I do not regret my major. I learned a lot and I learned so much about writing. I wrote so many short stories and poems. And obviously like you don't like write a book while you're a creative writing major. It's primarily geared towards reading a lot of good literature, dissecting it. A lot of it is just learning how to write good prose and write good poetry and work with words in a way that is compelling. But, I think I've known, like ever since I was 10 years old, I've known for a long time that storytelling is what I was created to do. And I've always wanted to actually finally write a full-length book, many full-length books, hopefully get them published. But like, even if they're not published, I just have to get them out. So that brings us to now. I'm 26 and my writing journey got a little bit interrupted because I got married, graduated college kind of roughly around the same time. COVID happened and then I got pregnant. I had a child. I got pregnant again, had another child. So now I have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old and I'm 26. I blinked and I'm like, I haven't written my book yet. I need to do that. And, I've got a day job. I work in graphic design and communications and social media, that sort of realm, which like I love my job, but it's not writing a book. It's not telling stories. I mean, there's some storytelling involved in like the design and that sort of thing, but it's not fantasy. And that's where my heart is. And I actually have another YouTube channel that I'm also running. So frankly, I might be kind of insane to be starting another YouTube channel, another commitment, another thing on my plate on top of being a full-time mom and having another job and having another YouTube channel and taking care of my house and being a wife and a friend and all those other hats that I wear. But gosh darn it, I've been thinking about starting this channel for months now because I want a community. I'm craving something to keep me accountable. I'm craving a place where I can talk about craft because right now, I don't really have anyone in my life to talk to about the stories that I'm writing and about the book that I'm writing and about just like all the stuff I'm thinking about. So yeah, I just want to be a part of this space and be another voice. Maybe I'll be speaking into the void, but maybe I'll find a community that's like-minded and wants to join me on my journey. And if that's the case, wonderful. But honestly, the thing that ignited all of this was last Christmas, I got a Kindle. And so honestly, when I became a mom, like I could not read as much as I wanted to read. I just completely fell off. I probably only read like between 5 and 10 books each year, which like compared to the average person was probably okay, like pretty decent. But for me was that was like unheard of compared to what I had done previously in my life. And I really, really miss reading. So I got a Kindle for Christmas, which I love physical books, but I was finding that like, it was just hard for me to pick up and read on the go, being so busy, that sort of thing. And I also downloaded the Libby app, which has been a lifesaver for me. So between the Libby app with audiobooks and ebooks on my Kindle, I've been able to read over 50 books this year, and I've been loving every second of it. I mean, that's all I really have the capacity to do is like roughly 1 book a week just because of how busy my life is. But of course, once I started reading again, it was game over. Like 3 months in to the year, in March of 2024, I was like, I need to write again. I need to write a book. I can't be reading and consuming without creating. And if I'm consuming content, I have to make it myself. Honestly, that's part of the reason I'm starting this YouTube channel is I've started consuming so much authortube content and writing vlogs. And I am just like, I've got to do it. I got to do it myself. It's just like a thing inside of me. I don't even know what it is. It just is like, ugh. I don't know. Maybe I'm just a creative soul or I don't know what it is, but whatever it is, it's crying for me to do this. So I'm doing it. And that's when I started writing the book that I'm currently working on. And you know, I was working on it very on and off. I was trying to figure out my rhythm and my process with this book. I didn't go into writing it with like a super specific, vivid idea. I brainstormed a lot. I just knew that I wanted to write again. I wanted to have a project to capture my soul again. So I started kind of vaguely with a concept. Obviously, I love fantasy, so it had to be a fantasy hands down. As far as age group, I was like, you know, I just want to write something that I would want to read. Probably be more geared towards adults, or at least, I mean, maybe borderline adults, young adults, but like probably adults. I mean, we'll see how it turns out in the end, but I just wanted to write something that I would enjoy reading. And I was like, okay, I like it when a world has had like a catastrophic event that has changed the tide of history, where like history was going one way, and then all of a sudden something happened and everything changed. And now for the last few decades or 100 years or however long, like everything, like it's like the people have been plunged into a dark ages of sorts, like a magical dark ages, or I don't know, like a fantasy equivalent to where like something fell and then what do you do with the rubble of that? It's not really strongly historical. It's very firmly in a fantasy world with a lot of classic fantasy races that I put my own spin on, such as, you know, elves and half-orcs, and obviously like very strongly inspired by D&D vibes because I also like Dungeons and Dragons. So it's really just a culmination of a lot of things that I enjoy, and I didn't want to put like a ton of pressure on myself to make it a super marketable book. I just needed to write it for myself first. So I began that process with just that seed of an idea of like, okay, I just like that concept. And I've kind of gone from there. It was very slow going at first. Like I said, I was trying to figure out my process again because I hadn't really written anything of substance since graduating college, which was 4 years ago. What? How? I'm sorry. I just like feel like I blinked and teleported to a point where I've spent more time out of college than I spent in college. Disgusting. But at first, this first draft was like so painstaking and polished because I've always been a person that's had a hard time like vomiting words out. Like I always spend way too much time really wanting the first version to come out perfect, which I know that goes against all of the conventional advice, but that's just like how it had to come out at first. And I think that that is what I needed to do initially because I needed to get into the weeds and figure out my characters, figure out my voice and my language for this draft, this book, and dissect that and really take the time to dig deep for those first, I don't know, 20,000 words or so. But those first 20,000 words, because I was taking my time and because I was so busy, obviously, it was taking me forever. Oh my gosh. I went from like March to, I don't know, maybe September or October, and I had only written like 20,000 words. In a span of like 6 or 7 months, it was 20,000 words, which is not a pace that I want because I was feeling pretty decent about the progress that I had made with my story, but I hadn't really, I don't know, sat down and crunched the numbers. I mean, I was not a math major and I just wasn't really setting goals for myself or thinking about word count that much. I was just spending a lot of time being super meticulous about my writing. Then I sat down and I was like, when do I want this first draft to be done? Because I feel like I'm taking a long time. And then I was like, okay, this book is probably going to be 100,000 words at least. And I did decide I think it's going to end up being a duology because I cannot contain the entire story and world of what I'm trying to express in a single book. So I am pretty certain it's going to be a duology. And each book is kind of handle its own, there will be some like thematic overlap, but there will be very distinct changes in my main characters between the first book and the second book, because they have very distinct arcs in the first book, but there's still going to be some stuff that they have to deal with in the second book, but their goals are completely different in the second book. So that's where I think it will be fitting for it to be a duology. But I was thinking, oh man, you know, if I want this first draft to have taken me like a year to complete, I am nowhere near done. So I better pick up the pace. So for the last 2 months, I've been a lot more intentional with my writing, and I decided, much to the like it just hurt my heart to do this, but I was like, you know what? I need to start like zero drafting and being like less meticulous with my first draft. I just need to make progress. I just need to get the story down. And even if it's in the style of telling the story to myself, where it's very telling rather than showing and like not great, at least I'm like getting the story down and some dialogue and ideas. Like even if I have to do that, I will do that. So starting in October, that's when I really started taking it more seriously. And between like the last 2.5 months, because I'm filming this on December 12th. So for the last 2.5 months, I have doubled my word count. I am now at about 40,000 words in my first draft of this book, which, by the way, I'm calling Project Phoenix. I have no idea what the title is going to be. I'm not going to even try to figure that out until I'm at least done with the first draft, I think, but it's just called Project Phoenix because, you know, I don't even know if phoenixes are going to end up being a big deal in the end, but in my initial idea, Phoenix was like a really strong image in my mind, so we're just keeping with calling it Project Phoenix anyways. But yeah, I've still been going pretty slowly, but I did like more of it. What I have been doing, okay, let me tell you what I have been doing with my process, is that I will do sort of like a zero draft or almost expanded outline with a little bit of prose interspersed in there that's like fairly decent. And I mean, if I'm feeling like I'm in a super poetic mood, I will let the words flow. I'm not going to make it trash on purpose. But if I just need to like get down the events on the page, I will do it. And then after a little while, I feel the need to go back. And I don't think I'm like necessarily properly revising it. I just smooth it out a little bit, expand it a little bit. And honestly, when I do that, I actually discover some details about the story and make connections that I might not have previously, because I'm not a person, like I have a rough idea of where I'm going. I have big chunks of my world figured out, but not everything. Some of it I just kind of come up with while I'm writing to serve the story. And I also know where it's going to end, and I have some general scene ideas and beats that I know that I need to hit, but I am not like a strict, super structured outliner, planner by any means, plotter, or whatever it is. I would say, yeah, I'm more of a plantser. I'm not a complete pantser. I don't just sit down and stare at a blank page. I kind of have to coax a lot of the details out as I'm like in the thick of it writing. And if I'm just doing a zero draft, I don't feel like I can really coax out some of those details and those connections and make those connections in my brain about the characters and about, I don't know, like I feel like really getting into the weeds and writing out the prose nicely actually helps me to solve problems in the story, if that makes sense. Where I was like, okay, I know that this needs to happen, but like, I don't really know how that's going to happen, how I'm going to go from A to B to C. Sometimes when I'm actually really writing in and putting a lot of details, I'll suddenly have an idea of like, oh, I know this needs to happen later on, but if I plant it here, then that kind of solves the problem, if that makes sense. But it has been slow going. But I also recently got Scrivener, which previously I was just using Google Docs as a start. But once I reached, because I feel like I am approaching the midpoint of my first draft, the midpoint of the story, I have like a couple chapters to write before I get to the midpoint. And kind of as a reward for that, I got Scrivener. It was actually supposed to be a Christmas gift, but my husband was like, why don't you just download it and start using it now? And I'm like, okay. So starting in December, like the first day of December is when I first started using Scrivener, and it has been a game changer for me. Like even the last 2 weeks, oh my gosh, I'm obsessed with it. I don't really have like a crazy setup or anything. It's very basic. I just kind of followed what Scrivener suggests for the most part, but I just absolutely love the way that it has organized my story. It feels a lot less daunting, especially now that I have so many words. And Google Docs was fine for starting out, but once I got to like the 30,000 word point, I was getting a little bit like, okay, like it's hard to find stuff in this document. It's not navigable. Everything, like, it was all in the drive, you know, my character sheets and that sort of thing, but it was not super well organized. But now I feel like everything is there. I love having like a little notes tab on the side where I can like spit out ideas without having to clog up my actual writing document. Chef's kiss. I'm obsessed with Scrivener right now. Oh my gosh. So yeah, that has been a big driver for me so far. Wow, I've talked a lot. But that's sort of roughly where I'm at in the story right now. And of course, I'll divulge more details as I see fit over the course of these writing vlogs. But yeah, this is really just an introduction to like the general idea, the gist of my writing journey and, you know, what got me to where I am today. So as far as goals go, I mean, I would love it if I could finish this first draft by the end of March, because that would mean it took me a year to get this draft out. And prayerfully, my second book, like in this duology, would take less time than that. Now that I know the world and the characters, because like a lot of the time was spent world building and figuring out my characters and figuring out the story and my voice and that sort of thing. Like it took time to hammer all that stuff out and to get back into the rhythm of writing after not really writing for 4 years. Frankly, I think that might be like a little bit ambitious because I don't know. I guess it just depends. I think it is very doable for me to write 10,000 words a month. Like, I think that is possible. I just have to carve out the time and space to do it. And I would love to take a couple of writing retreats between now and then. I don't know how possible that's going to be, but like, that would be wonderful. But even if I can't finish the first draft by the end of March, I'm just going to keep going and it's going to be fine. I guess my first draft could be shorter than 100,000 words, especially if I like do resort to a lot more zero drafting and just skip a few scenes and have more placeholders and stuff like that and don't have things hashed out, in which case that would bring me to like a 70,000 to 80,000 word first draft, which I feel is fairly typical. It's within the realm of normal, depending on whether you're an overwriter or an underwriter. I think that I am probably more of an underwriter, is my guess, because there are a lot of like transitions missing between scenes. I feel sometimes I struggle with knowing exactly where I want to end a scene, and I tend to like go through things pretty quickly without like taking a lot of time to slow down and add internality to my characters. But I think for this video, I'll try to get in a couple of writing sessions and kind of keep talking to you about the book and what's going on. But yeah, in the long run, I don't know if this book is going to be published. I hope it will be. I mean, it would be my debut novel. Not necessarily the first book that I've ever written, but the first book that I've like actually completed. And I am very determined to do that. So yeah, let's get some writing done. I'll probably film a couple of writing sessions over the next few days here. We are heading into the weekend, so it would be great if I can carve out some time to write. Frankly, my schedule is full to the brim and very busy, but writing is important to me, so I do try to carve out as much time as I can. And I'll continue telling you about my book and the things that we're doing, the problems that we're solving. So yeah, I hope that you join me on this journey. Okay, I've barely made literally any progress. I mainly just like wrote down some of the ideas of what I want to write about next, which like is still valid, but like I didn't like make any real true progress. However, I did do like a little bit of tweaking and like I reread a few things. And so okay, I am a really big fan of books within books, you know, having literature in a world and poetry. And so I'm sort of toying around with that idea a little bit. The male main character loves books, he loves libraries, he loves reading, that sort of thing. And so he really gravitated towards a specific book. I haven't really introduced our characters yet, or like any really real context of the story. I'll do that at some point, but like I haven't really figured out a very good, concise way of describing the story and the characters yet, because it's all still so big in my mind. And I know a lot of people are like, well, you should start off with a log line. You should start off with a succinct way of describing your book, but maybe I'll do that for future books. But with the process that has occurred with this current book, that's just like not happening. All that to say, I know I'm not really describing this well enough, but let's get to the meat of what I'm trying to say, okay? So I wrote like 3 stanzas of a little ballad, and I haven't really written poetry since I graduated from college, but I wrote a lot of poetry in my creative writing classes. A lot of poetry was on my senior project, so I really miss tinkering with words. And I didn't really specialize in any sort of narrative poetry. Ballads tend to be more of like a narrative form of poetry, and that also serves the story well, and it's a really cool world building element and is also applicable to this character. And I'm gonna read you what I have so far. It's not, I can't tell if it's good or not. I'm happy with it because I haven't written a poem in a really long time, but it might be cringe. But I'm trying to do a lot of things at once. I'm trying to communicate something in the world, but also I don't want it to be like a super cringy poem or something. And realistically, I know that a lot of readers might just skim over it the same way that they like skim over the songs that Tolkien included in Lord of the Rings. But like, I'm doing it anyways because I'm a big fan of that sort of thing. And I think it's a unique way to inform the reader of certain things that will be applicable, particularly to the antagonist in the story, which the reader has been introduced to the antagonist, but they don't know that it's the antagonist yet, and they don't know a whole lot about the antagonist. So this element will kind of start giving the reader a hint. And like in retrospect, when they think back and maybe remember this ballad, and maybe I'll have the characters refer back to it, maybe things will click into place. I don't know if it's going to work the way that I intend it to, but okay, at this point, I think I'm just procrastinating reading you this piece because like this is the first writing or like the first lines I'm giving you on this channel, and I don't even know if they're good. But I'll tell you what I was trying to do a little bit. Oh gosh, I can't believe I'm doing this. Okay, it's literally not even prose. It's an attempt at in-world poetry. Okay, so my goal with this was to make it the rhyme scheme ABCB. So each stanza has 4 lines, and it alternates between iambic tetrameter. So the A and C lines are both iambic tetrameter. So it's supposed to go da 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 da. Okay, editing me here. Silly me in the moment while filming. Said the wrong thing. I misspoke. I meant for iambic tetrameter da 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 da. Not just da 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 da, because as you will soon find out, da 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 is just trimeter, not tetrameter, which is 4 iams. So, yeah. Just ignore what I just said before this, and yeah, that's what I meant. Okay. I'm like somewhat confident that I'm doing this correctly, but again, it's been a long time since I've studied poetry, so like, take all that with a grain of salt, and if I'm completely wrong, I'm sorry. Maybe my creative writing degree was for nothing, but anyway. And then iambic trimeter are the 2 B lines, so da 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 da. So only 3 of those iams. Okay, I'm feeling so self-conscious. Okay. So this is like half of the ballad, but like the character closes the book before you get the rest of it, and maybe we'll get the rest of it later. It's supposed to like tell a piece of history about one of the races in the book, the elves. A secret lives within the woods where nightfall children lie, these last creations most perfected, yet born to kill or die. Their power grows from blood-fed roots, to all, to each, to one. For some to rise, the rest must fall. The Maker's curse he spun. The moon did watch when hollow night as kin turned beast infernal. A cruel gift, the smiling god, divided the spoils eternal. So, yeah, I think I'm fairly happy with it, but obviously still first draft. I think I did a decent job considering the parameters that I gave myself for the poem. I don't know if you understood any of that. In the context of the book, I think that it makes sort of sense. In the world of this book, there are 3 gods, or 2 gods and 1 goddess, and each of them created kind of their own race. Although one of the gods actually created multiple races because he's a perfectionist and he felt like he didn't get it right on the first try. So he created goblins, and then orcs, and then elves were the last of his creations. So these last creations, most perfected yet born to kill or die. Each of these gods kind of has a way that they share a gift with their own creation. And that's how magic manifests, is that they give a piece of their power to their creations. But each god has like their own philosophy as to how to do that. So for example, one god, the god of humans, he like freely gives his mana away. He gives away his power. And it's like imbued, or at least used to be. Remember how I was talking about the Dark Ages inspiration and like fall from the empire type deal? So magic used to be super readily available to humans because it was in the earth itself, and like they could just kind of draw from it and it was there. And then there's another goddess. She's the goddess of harpies, and they kind of have their own secret thing going on that the other races don't know about. But for elves, now, the god of those 3 races, the goblins, the orcs, and the elves, he did not give any magic to the goblins or the orcs. But to the elves, he believes that power must come at great sacrifice and that you have to work to get it. And he also only set aside a very specific amount of his power that would be distributed equally among all of the elves. But of course, if they're distributed equally, that means that the more elves there are, the less power there is to go around. But the fewer elves there are, the more power there is, which, as you can imagine, for any power-hungry individuals that are willing to kill to get more power, yikes. So that's a big part of history in this world, is that there are very few elves out there because they all killed each other. And because there are so few elves and they have access to so much power, they are practically immortal for that reason, because there's maybe a dozen elves total in the entire world, because again, they killed each other, and they're also not really motivated to procreate, because if an elven child is born, it's a little bit less power for them. So yeah, that's a piece of world building for you. I don't know for sure how interesting it is or intriguing, but like I personally like it. And so this ballad kind of tells that story without it being super on the nose, because in the context it makes sense as to like why this character is reading this book. Yeah, that was probably like way too much information, but I just needed to process that piece of the story and of the world. Yeah, I had a lot of fun working on that. So actually, I spent way too much time working on that ballad like 2 days ago. Like that was like all I worked on. So it's still honestly the first initial draft. I very well might go change it. All right, let's keep writing and actually get somewhere before I interrupt myself to talk to the camera. Did you just hear that I was filming? Hi. Oh my goodness. Hi. This is Alphonse, by the way, and he is obsessed with hanging out with me while I'm filming. Yeah, get used to him. Hi. Hi, baby. I love you. Oh my goodness. Literally, I just started talking and he just flew inside the room. Like, he knows. It's hilarious. Okay, anyway. So I didn't get a chance to film again last night, but I did write on and off. I mean, I was interrupted quite a lot. So I started writing. I maybe wrote like 300 words, and then I had to get up and go make dinner and then get the kids to bed. And then I started writing again for maybe another hour or so. You know, my speed when it comes to writing fluctuates so much, and it's so heavily dependent on what scene I'm writing. In an hour of writing, usually I can get between 500 and 1,000 words written, but really it depends on the scene. At times I've done like a lot faster than that. Like I've done like 2,000 words in 30 minutes or something crazy, but it was like word vomit, zero draft, just like not really worrying about prose. But if I'm being like at all finicky or at all really thinking through things, it takes me a lot longer. So last night I was able to write 1,136 words, and they were all like fairly solid words, like very little zero drafting. I had a few, like I like to put in placeholders with brackets if I'm not really sure about that, or if I know right off the bat, like I know that I'm going to change it. For example, if I use a metaphor that's really familiar and really overdone and overused, I immediately just put it in brackets and I'm like, I know I'm going to change that later, but that's just a placeholder. I know I want to use some sort of figurative language there, but I just haven't thought deeply enough about that yet. But in general, I feel like the words I was able to write were pretty good. It took a while for me to really get into it, but once I got the kids to bed and I sat down for like more of a dedicated hour, I put on some like fantasy music that I was listening to using my AirPods. And what I love to do is I put in my AirPods and then I use the like noise cancellation function with them. And then like I feel fully immersed in the music and like I'm not distracted by all the noises like of cars driving by or like my cats running around or anything. Like I can just really get in the zone. The chapter that I'm in, I had written maybe about half of it, and I went back in the chapter a bit and I added some more internality because I was realizing something needed to happen at the end of the chapter, where he's motivated to tell a person a secret, essentially, like something that he has been holding back. But I felt like the journey to get there didn't quite make entire sense. Like I had held back a little bit on some of that like internal processing that this character needed to go through before he was willing to share that secret. So I went back and added more to that. And then I felt comfortable moving forward to the next part of the scene where they go into a tavern and it's crazy and they experience some stuff and there's some like relational things going on. And then this male main character, I actually stopped writing where he spoke up and he was like, hey, I need to tell you something that I have not been ready to share until this point, essentially, is what happened. So now, moving forward, like that's the next thing that I'm going to write, which I'm actually excited to write this. One of my favorite things to write are character interactions and dialogue. And really, I feel like the characters that I have, I don't know, I just love their interactions together because they all have such different approaches to life and different philosophies and different desires and fears, and they're kind of stuck together. They're this trio of characters that will slowly get closer, but yet they are all very different people. And some of my favorite scenes so far have been them talking with each other and bantering, and there's a lot of like tension, but also maybe some jokes here and there because they are still trying to maintain a sense of camaraderie, but they also don't always agree with each other. So I feel like, the next writing session that I have where I can really start digging into this portion, I feel like I'm predicting that the words will really flow. That being said, I thought that I would do another writing session for this vlog, but I started editing this vlog and it turns out I'm quite the yapper when it comes to talking about writing. I guess I should have known. But this video is already going to be, honestly, probably too long for like a first video on a YouTube channel. I don't know who's going to be willing to click on like a 40-minute video from a person that they don't know. But I mean, again, if you're here and if you are still watching, I mean, kudos to you. I am very grateful. The last thing that I wanted to talk about was I actually created a TrackBear account for the first time. I've been thinking about it for a while, but I just like hadn't gotten around to it. And actually, I do have a correction. I had said earlier that I was at 40,000 words, which I was almost at 40,000 words, but I realized I had to go back and delete a lot of like the zero draft leftovers that I had already kind of overwritten, but I just like left there for some reason. So the real word count, including what I wrote last night, is currently sitting at 37,736 words, or I mean, I'm just on the cusp of 38,000 words. So I was a little bit sad I had to cut so much. That felt a little bit disheartening to see. And so I wasn't like quite as far along as I thought that I was. However, I did also create a goal for myself on Track Bear, and I have no idea if this is actually going to be a realistic or sustainable goal, but I am hoping to write 4,000 words a week between now and the end of March. And if I can manage 4,000 words a week, which I think is fairly achievable, but maybe not. I don't know. I mean, last night was a pretty good writing night for me. I mean, if I just do that 4 times a week, I would be right on track. So we shall see. I do have the week between Christmas and New Year's off, and I would absolutely love to take a writing retreat during that period of time. So if I'm able to do that, I'm hoping, like, if I can spend an entire day away from all of my other responsibilities and away from, you know, my children. I love them dearly, but they don't help my writing process that much other than forming me into a better and more persevering individual. Yeah, if I were to spend an entire day writing and I knew where I was going with the plot too, like I didn't feel stuck, I think I might be able to hammer out 10,000 words in a day. I mean, I don't know, but maybe. But anyway, that is the current goal that I set for myself on Track Bear. But yeah, I think that that's all I really have to say. Lord knows I could yap for longer, but I should probably refrain. I really appreciate you taking the risk and clicking on this video and joining me for my writing journey, I guess. And if you are writing or creating anything, I hope that it thrives and flourishes. Excuse me, that was rude. Until next time, bye-bye.